All right, so we talked about the three main short form copy frameworks, DIC, PAS, HSO. Before you actually dive in and start writing them, I want to give you some best practices for short form copy. They're going to help you avoid some of the landmines and make sure that your short form copy is on point. So the first thing, a lot of people will ask questions like, how long should short form copy be? How long is too long, right? Most short form copy should be under 150 words in length. That's a really good target for you as a beginner because that limit forces you to write only impactful words, only impactful sentences, right? If you give yourself a lot of leeway, like no boundaries on how long your copy should be, most beginners tend to jam a bunch of unnecessary stuff in there and go off the rails or lose the actual attention of the reader. So it's better to stick at 150 words because it forces you to write impactful copy and it helps you avoid mistakes. So maybe if you're doing like an HSO email and you're doing a really compelling story, maybe you can go a little bit more than that. But for 99% of the time when you're sitting down writing copy, you should try and keep it under 150 words per email or Facebook ad or whatever you're doing, right? 150 words is about how much someone can even engage with anyways. It's best to follow the mini skirt rule, right? Your writing should be long enough to cover the important parts, but short enough to keep things interesting, right? You want to go through as you're reviewing your copy and ask yourself with each line, like, does this add to the copy? Does it subtract to the copy, or is it neutral? If it's neutral, it doesn't do anything for the copy, or if it doesn't, or if it's a negative, you should remove it, right? You should only keep things that are positive. So try and keep it under 150 words. Some people ask, like, how many ideas can I try and fit into a piece of short form copy? Each piece of short form copy should only have one main idea, and you should focus on that one main idea. If you try and cram in multiple ideas of copy into multiple ideas into one piece of copy, you start to sound a little bit like a crazy person with multiple personalities. Start to sound like this guy, right? You want to keep it focused on one idea. That allows you to bring all of your persuasion powers to bear on one single idea. If you try and put in a bunch of ideas, it dilutes your power over multiple ideas and it weakens your effectiveness, right? If you have other good ideas for different angles or different problems or things like that that you would want to talk about, that's fine. Just break them out and put them in another email, another Facebook ad, or whatever format you're writing for. It's better to create multiple pieces of copy that each focus on one idea and create one piece of copy that focus on 5 different ideas because it loses its potency. One idea per one piece of copy. There's this idea that I like to call the thread, right? As you're writing your copy, you need to maintain the thread. Each line of your copy should connect to the next line, right? There should be no gaps between the ideas of one line and the line that follows, right? It should all follow logically. It's connected, right? It's like the metaphor that sometimes is used. It's like a water slide. Like each line should make you want to read the next line, right? It's like like going down the slide at a water park. The longer you go down the slide, the more you want to keep going down the slide, right? Or the faster you go, right? The more you read, the more you should want to keep reading, right? Because each line builds upon the next. There's no gaps. You're not jumping from one idea to the next. There's no friction. You're not, adding unnecessary words or complicated sentence structure. It's just clean, simple, easy. One line building on the next, building on the next, building on the next. You'll recognize this when you read your copy. If it flows well, if each idea connects with the next. If you read it and you're like, wait, how did I go from here to that? You've got a gap and you need to bridge the gap either with a new line or you need to combine those ideas or fix your structure of ideas, right? It should be an exciting, exhilarating, fun experience, right? A big part of writing copy is you want to create something that's more entertaining than their other options, right? You're in competition with TikTok, you're in competition with Instagram, you're in competition with their spending time with their loved ones and like their dog, right? You want to make sure that right there for them in that moment, the experience of reading your copy is fun and exciting, right? And you can do that by talking about relevant things. You can do that by being entertaining and writing in a way that produces strong emotions. But at the end of the day, it needs to make sense, it needs to be easy. You want a fun, exciting, exhilarating experience for the reader, right? Another thing to talk about is readability. You want to use normal fonts. I see a lot of people show up and they try and write with different things. They try and do tiny font size, different weird fonts. Just use a normal font, simple, easy to read font. You want to keep your grammar and spelling on point. Again, you don't want the reader to have to try and sit there and figure out what you're trying to say. Don't use vague language. Don't use things like this or it. You want to specify those things. You want it to be really easy for the reader to read, no friction, right? Avoid long paragraphs. They're hard to digest for the reader, and especially on mobile, it gets really hard to read any paragraph that's more than like 1 or 2 lines, because on mobile it gets squished down to like 8, and that's not fun for anybody to read. Keep it to one complete idea per paragraph or line, right? This means either one complete sentence or one complete phrase, right? Don't split up your ideas for the reader across multiple lines. This is bad. It's better that it's all together in one single line like this. Keep it simple, keep it clean. Because this is difficult to read. This forces the reader to have to like piece ideas together. The more friction you create for the reader when they're trying to consume your copy, the harder it's going to be for them to actually want to stick around and do that and be persuaded, right? You want to keep it simple, keep it clean, keep all the ideas together. If it's one solid sentence, keep it in one little paragraph, keep it all together. If it's one complete phrase, maybe you can do that. Never split up complete ideas. You can use bold text, underlines, italics, and all caps sparingly for emphasis. If you use them too much, then they stop being effective, right? You can use them every so often, maybe once or twice per piece of short form copy, to emphasize certain phrases. But if you start using them every line, it loses very quickly. It stops being a pattern interrupt, starts being something new, and it just becomes the norm, and then it loses all of its power. You can use emojis when appropriate, right? A lot of people ask this. If it's appropriate with your avatar, with your niche and your market, you can use emojis. Probably not if you're like a lawyer writing for like corporate law, probably shouldn't do that. But if you're writing for like most people, emojis are helpful for instilling that emotional context that you don't get from just pure written communication, right? They say, well, like 90% of communication is nonverbal. It's your tonality, it's your body language, that kind of stuff. That's how you get the context to know if someone's being sarcastic or what their emotional state is when they're saying certain words. Since that doesn't exist in written words, like emojis were invented so you could communicate that emotion, that emotional, that nonverbal subtext with these little images, right? So they're useful. They can catch attention. They're usually colorful. There's a lot of ways to use emojis. Make sure you're using them appropriately for your niche. Don't use them for, like I said, corporate lawyers. Probably not the best thing to do. But for like fat loss for Amy, like we've been talking about for this example, you use emojis all day. Avoid sales cliches, right? So readers are extremely wary of salesy or pushy techniques, right? There are things that trigger them and make them wary or distrustful of you, right? If you say things like, luckily for you, I happen to have blah, 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 or what if I told you, or trust me, or you don't want to miss this, things like that trigger what I call sales guard. It's like this instant resistance and disqualification from the reader. It's like they read those words and their hands go up and they're like, I'm now resisting. We're in a fight. You have an agenda. I can tell you're a sleazy salesman just trying to push some product on me, right? You want to avoid sales cliches, keep it personal, keep it as if it's one person speaking to another, because at the end of the day, you do have their best interest at heart, and you want to speak that way and be congruent with that so that they can trust you and you can help them make changes in their life and pay you a lot of money in the process. Yeah, avoid being too professional. Yeah, so this is common. Some people, when they show up, only really the real writing they've done is for like school assignments, like writing essays or something like this. This is not an essay. This is not an assignment for school. You want to avoid formal language or like overly formal language or any form of kind of complicated sentence structure. You're not going to need bonus points for using complex phrases or anything like that. You want the feel to be like one person talking to another person that they get along with, right? Like they're friends, or two people speaking, like it's the guru speaking directly to one instance of the avatar, right? And you obviously need to modulate the feel of that conversation based on the avatar and the guru and the market and all that stuff, but it should feel personal. It should feel like personal communication. Overly formal stuff isn't exciting. It's hard to connect deeply like that. You want to build, whoever can persuade the deepest wins, right? Whoever can show that they care the most and relate the most and have the deepest rapport with that reader wins, right? So it's important to avoid being too formal when you're first writing, and keep it personal, keep it relatable, right? You want to have fun with it, right? Because the reader will be able to feel that when they read your copy, right? If you sit down to write and you're angry, you're upset or scared or frustrated or worried, that emotion bleeds through in the language. Like it's like you can get all woo-woo with it or whatever, but like they can feel that energy when they read the copy. But if you're having fun, if you're happy, if you're enjoying it, if you're feeling it, if you feel strongly and believe strongly in the validity of what you're talking about, dude, they can feel that in the writing and they'll respond to it. They'll pick up on it. So make sure you're having fun with the whole thing. And that's really like my final advice for you as you're starting to dive into actually writing this stuff. Dude, have fun with it. Writing is fun. It can be a lot of fun. It's challenging and difficult, but it's a fun problem to solve. It's a fun challenge, fun puzzle. But you're helping people. You're connecting with people, and you're interacting with them, and you're guiding them. You're playing around with curiosity and motivation and desire, and it's a fun process. So learn to have fun with it. Right? Keep these things in mind. Avoid some of these mistakes. Make sure your writing is you're following these best practices so that your writing is compelling, it's interesting, it's exciting, it's fun, and you can't really go wrong if you do that and you speak directly to people and you follow the frameworks we're talking about here. Man, your writing will stand out like glow in the dark compared to most of the stuff that they're going to encounter in their day-to-day life. Writing can be fun. Make it fun. Make it fun for the reader.